Welcome to the 100th episode of the Gear Club podcast. For our centennial episode, we decided to go through all the interviews we've done over the years and put together our staff favorites. We're all very proud of the stories that we've been able to share through the show and have had a lot of fun making it. We hope you've had fun listening, and if you have, please like, subscribe, and leave a review or a comment. When you do, it helps us reach a lot more listeners, and we really appreciate you taking the time to do it. Links to the full episodes these clips come from can be found at gearclubpodcast.com on the 100th episode page. We're glad you're here, and we hope you enjoy what we think are the best moments of Gear Club so far. And now, without further ado,
welcome to Gear Club!
In episode 11, we spoke to engineer and producer Chris Shaw about his career and work with Public Enemy, Weezer, Bob Dylan, and many others. In this clip, Chris talks about working with Bob and his band and shares mixing advice given to him by Dylan. This may be my personal favorite story from the Gear Club archives.
What was the first record you did with him?
I did Love and Theft.
Right.
Well, actually, no, the very first thing I did with Bob.
That's a great record.
All right, I'll tell you the whole Bob story, how I got to work with Bob. It's kind of weird. He was on tour he was doing his tour like in 2000 or 99. He was doing a double headliner with Paul Simon. They came to New York and they had like the whole weekend off, and he got asked to do a song for a movie soundtrack. And he'd also been talking to his manager, Jeff Rosen, a wonderful guy.
Yep. Who, by the way, still works with
he's been his guy
forever.
Forever. And one of the nicest,
absolutely,
funniest, like no bullshit guy on the planet. I love the guy.
Yep.
And so Bob was also making noise, like, I think I got enough songs for a new record, so like, let's go to New York, and he was going to produce the record himself. Let's do the soundtrack, let's find an engineer, and then if just one thing goes, the one song goes good, we'll use it for the record. But, I didn't know that, So at Columbia, there's this A&R guy, or there was, Steve Berkowitz.
Sure,
Steve, yeah. Steve's awesome, another awesome guy. Steve is giving me, every time this phone rings and Steve, it's a great gig.
Right.
So Berkowitz is like, maybe you should try working with this guy, Chris. He's like, did some Jeff Buckley stuff with me. He did some Sean Colvin for me. He's worked with Sophie B. Hawkins. He's naming all these singer-songwriters, and Rosen's just like, Bob's worked at all those guys, like, the last thing he wants to do is work with another singer-songwriter engineer. And he's like, well, has he done anything else? And he's like, well, yeah, he worked with Public Enemy, and blah, blah, blah. And like, Jeff is a big Public Enemy fan. Him and his kids love Public Enemy. And Bob's a big fan of Chuck D and the lyrics, and he's like, well, at the very least, I'll have some good stories. Let's try this guy. So
at the very least,
that's kind of like Rosen's thing, That's the way he looked at it. And so we booked out Clinton recording. I booked Clinton recording sight unseen, right? Because I knew they had a Neve, and they did like union gigs, like the Emmys and stuff like that. So I knew the maintenance would be top notch, and the room would be really big, and we probably wouldn't have any problems. When we get there, the band shows up. I set them up in a circle. Bob shows up. We tracked this song, and he's like, no, let's try it like this. And he changed the arrangement and changed the key and the tempo, and doesn't it take? No, let's try it like this. And they do it like a New Orleans shuffle. I go, yeah, that sounds good. He goes out there, recuts the vocal like for one lyric. He sends Charlie Sexton out there to do an acoustic guitar overdub, and then we do a shaker overdub. And like, he's like, okay, yeah. So, and we're done. It's like 6, He's like, okay, well, let's just do a quick mix and get out of here. I'm like, fine, great. So I have the assistant throw a DAT in a DAT machine, I do a quick rough mix. I bring Bob back in. He listens to it. He goes, it sounds all right, but I can hear everything, And I can close my eyes and point the guitar, and I can point at the cymbals. I'm like, and I'm thinking, and that's a bad thing. He's like, just can we mush it up together and like put my voice through an amp or something like that, and and I'm like, all right, fine. I send them out, and by this time the roadies packed up everything up. So I grabbed one of my distortion boxes and put his vocal through it, and a little bit of the snare drum, and he comes in, he goes, yeah, that sounds good, where's the shaker? He's like, I'm like, I point at the fade, he's like, he just cranks it all the way up, and we run that past the shaker crazy. It's like the cowbell skit in Saturday Night Live, it's just like, it's all shaker.
More shaker.
More shaker. And then, I print it to DAT, and I make him a cassette, and I figure, okay, we're done, Rosen calls me up 2 days later. He's like, where's the half inch? I called the studio. They can't find the half inch for this. I'm like, there is no half inch.
It's a rough mix.
He's like, yeah, Bob said, let's do a mix. Let's do a quick mix and get out of here. And like, I can hear him face palming on the other end of the line. He's
it's
like,
a final.
He's like, man, that's on me. Right. He's like, basically, Bob says, let's do a quick mix. He really means let's do a mix quick.
Right.
Get the hell out of here. And I'm like, oh man. I'm like, okay, man. Well, if you want me to, I can go back and redo it. I mean, it was literally just a faders up mix with a little reverb, because no. Bob will hear a difference. I'll just make sure I run off this. Make a couple copies of that, so we have an archive of it. And it wound up being that movie, The Wonder Boys, and he wins the Oscar for it.
Wow. Oh my God.
A word man with a word mind. No one in front of me and nothing but woman on my lap and she's drinking champagne.
I'm watching the Oscars, that he wins, I get up, I slam my head against the wall. I was like, I did that to a dad. I did that to a dad. I can't believe I did that to a dad, you know. So from that day on, I always had like a 1-inch, 2-track, 15 ifs, no noise reduction. Every mix once that, you know. We did a song for some other movie, and I begged Jeff. I was like, look, could we track it on like Saturday and have me mix it on Sunday, because it's just I'm flying out to LA. I'm gonna be exhausted. Just, you know. And they had Bob come and show up at 4, full well knowing that he'd show up at 3, you know. Right. And so I'm at the studio and I'm mixing, and Bob shows up early, obviously. I'm like 5 minutes away from finishing, you know. And he comes in, he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just finishing up the mix, Bob. No, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm trying to make it sound better, Bob. And, better than what? I'm like, no, and like, I'm just like, you know, I was like, Bob, give me 10 minutes. Give me 10 minutes, Bob, and I'll be done. He leaves and he comes back in 5 minutes later. He's like, you're not done yet? And I'm like, Jesus, you know, like, and like, he's like, well, you're the genius. And he sits down on the couch and he's like, yeah, I know you're the genius here, but let me tell you what I know about mixing. And in my head, I'm just screaming, fuck you, I just need 5 minutes and I'll be done, you know. But then another thing, I was like, well, yeah, Bob's going to tell me what he thinks, how he, what his view of mixing is. This will be interesting to say the least, you know. He's like, well, you know, engineers come in and they push the kick drum fader up and they fiddle around with the knobs and, you know, IQ or whatever it is that you guys do. And it's like, now the kick drum sounds fantastic. And then they push up the snare and the same thing happens again. Snare drum sounds fantastic. And then they go down the whole line and everything sounds fantastic except for the song. What do you do? And he looks at me and he goes, what are you doing? I'm like, give me 15 minutes, Bob. All right, I'll give you 15 minutes. So I stood there at the console and I looked and I took out all the EQs and all the inserts on everything except maybe the kick, the snare, and his vocal, and just everything flat, right? And I hit play. I was on an SSL, and I had a bunch of automation running at that. It was like a long, like 7 minutes long. I hit play, and I'm sitting there on the couch. I'm sitting next to my assistant, and about 5 minutes into that mix, I went, "Motherfucker,
he's right.
It sounds awesome." You know, and like, all right, that's it. You know, so you know, it's you learn from everybody, man.
Out of the window come the dazzling sunlit rays, through the back alleys, through the blinds, another manless day.
For more behind the scenes with Bob Dylan, check out episode 95, where we talk to the engineers, producers, and musicians who have worked most closely with Bob. In episode 96, we talked with musician and producer Doug Wimbish, bassist for Living Colour and witness to the birth of hip-hop. In this clip, Doug talks to John and Stewart about the inception of the Sugar Hill Gang, the making of Rapper's Delight, and how Sugar Hill Records helped bring hip-hop to the masses.
All Platinum shifted into Sugar Hill Records. Same place, same location.
Where? Now, once again, Inglewood?
All Platinum Studios was located at 96 West Street in Inglewood, New Jersey, off of Palisades Avenue, right? That label, as under the name of All Platinum, put out artists like The Moments, and then they had Sylvia Robinson was the owner and artist on the label and producer, Joe Robinson being her husband. They had, again, artists like The Moments, and then they did The Whatnots. They had, Sylvia had her hits, Pillow Talk. Sylvia came from working with Mickey and Sylvia. And if you remember, they had a big hit called Love is Strange. And Love is Strange was one of, if not the most played single at that time in America until the Beatles came in.
Love is strange. Lot of people.
So she was also, you know, started off young, singing with a big band. When I met Sylvia in 1974, she was coming off the fame of Pillow Talk. It was like meeting the Black Elizabeth Taylor. I'd never seen a diamond ring that big in my life. She was a real star. You know, you go to All Platinum Records, you go in there. They had a 16-track studio, man, at that time. But they did have Eventide gear there. The first time I saw Eventide gear ever was All Platinum Studios, right? That era of 1974 to 1979, we were able to elevate. The music was getting even more deeper. I was in a band called Wood, Brass, and Steel. And that gave us the opportunity to put a record out. and also to work up the ranks. So by 1978 or 9, I became as equal as everybody else. I did records with Etta James, Solomon Burke. Great. Wilson Pickett came there. Now, 79 comes up. The record label had gotten caught in a tax issue. There was one time we came by the studio and I was like, and the government had just shut the studio down, locked it up, put a friggin' do not go, you can't come in here. My bass was stuck in the studio at that time. But anyway, they hit difficult times. All Platinum was at the lowest that they could possibly be at, probably at that time. And we had taken the whole journey with them from 74. Things were vibrant, and then, the industry's shifting. Everything's kind of shifting over. Right at the beginning or early part of 1979, I started to push back from being at All Platinum because we realized we saw the writing on the wall. There was some issues, like all labels happen. You're disappointed because this record didn't happen, whatever. Let's start to look at other possibilities, right? So we stepped back. Then August comes up. And then Sylvia Robinson calls my mom's house. We're still in the frequency of we had put a second record out. They were supposed to promote it. Nothing happened. We hadn't heard anything. Sylvia's calling my house. My elders are like, don't take the call. Don't answer the call. I'm going to obey my elders. So then, you're not going to believe this. So then about, not even just a couple days later, we're playing at a place in New Haven, Connecticut called Leo's Welfare Disco. Can't make this shit up, can you? Yeah. And it was right next to the welfare office. And their motto to get in was $2 or a black eye. So we're playing at the Leo's Welfare Disco. And next thing you know, I hear Rapper's Delight come on the radio.
Oh, man.
Oh, wow.
I said a hip hop, the hip it to the hip.
I heard 8 bars and I was like, that's an All Platinum record.
Yeah.
Because look, the sound of Muscle Shoals, the sound of Motown. My ears were tuned to the studios at that time because I was living in that world, and nothing could be as cheesy as that damn All Platinum record was at that time. You can't. You have to. There's no plug-in that can give you that much cheese going on right now. That's not going to happen.
Well, maybe that's something for Eventide to work.
All right,
out.
Eventide needs to work on All Platinum 74 through 79 cheese era. So anyway, I hear it. I'm like, let me give Sylvia a call. She called back again, and I called her back. Hey, Doug. And I love how she used to say, how you doing? I miss you. I got something that's hot. I need you. Where's Skip? I need you to come on up here now. I said, okay, I'll come down. So I drove down. I went back down there.
So they stayed at the same.
Well, here's the deal. They cut Rapper's Delight, right? And technically, if I would have answered that phone call earlier, I would have been on it, right? Her son, Joey Jr., was 16 at the time. Now, hip-hop had been going on in the Bronx for 5 years before, but it stayed regional. It was in the city. Her son turned her mother on to rap. Big Bank Hank worked at Crispy Crust Pizza on Palisades Avenue. So he was a bouncer at night at a club called Disco Fever. But during the day, he worked at Crispy Crust Pizza on Palisades Avenue. So you would go get your slice of pizza, you go in there, and Hank would be hip, hop, the hip, hip, hop, and he's making pizzas and spinning it, right? So, Mama, you got to hear this rap stuff. So the late, great DJ Hollywood had a residency at a place called Harlem World. So he brings his mom to go see DJ Hollywood. And the DJ's spinning this stuff. And then next thing you know, Sylvia's so clever. She's like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's hot.
That's great.
I get it. So then, Joey, I want to cut a record. Let's go find me some rappers. Find me a rapper. Word got out in Inglewood. Big Bank Hank was the first one because he brings his mom to Crispy Crust and she meets Hank, and Hank's animated. You know what I mean? So he's like, he's Big Bank Hank. You know what I mean? He's straight from South Bronx. Knew the vibe, but had a very pleasant, joyous frequency. Hank, I loved Hank. One of my first pedals I ever got in the world came from Hank.
Really?
Totally. Wonder Mike and Guy just happened to catch the wind because all the kids played on Palisades Avenue, hanging out at McDonald's or whatever. So they caught wind that there was auditions. Sylvia was just trying to find one rapper. Mm-hmm. So Sylvia's like, so Wonder Mike and Guy come in, and they're chopping it up. with Sylvia. So Sylvia was like, okay, all three of you come to my house. They lived up in Inglewood Cliffs, and we're going to continue the audition here. So they're all in the crib, and Sylvia's choice was to choose one. So, okay, play a beat. They would pass the mic around. Hank, you go first. And then he would go, well, I'm Ip the Dip, the ladies pip, the women fight for my delight, because I'm the grand master with the 3 MCs. He start rapping these rhymes, right? Pass the microphone over to Guy. He'd rap something. Pass the mic over to Wonder Mike. Wonder Mike was with a hip hop, the hip hip, the hip 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 hop, and you don't stop. And she's cool. Okay, pass the mic back to Big Bang Hank. Well, I'm Ip the Dip, the ladies pip. He keeps singing the same rap over again, right? Sylvia could instantly see what was going on. And the backstory of Wonder Mike and Guy, they already had a rap group. They were kind of like real, kind of getting it in. Hank was the bouncer at Disco Fever, so he'd be in the doorway listening to everybody's raps, or one of which was his boy was Grandmaster Caz. So he didn't really have any original lines. Right. He's repeating what Caz, his boy, would say. So they kind of picked that up. And Sylvia was like, you know what? In the middle of the night, like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning.
Make it a group.
I like Hank's voice. I like Guy's vibe. And the Wonder Mike is real tall, handsome, sleek. So she was like, you know what? I'm going to use all three of y'all. Genius. And that's how Rapper's Delight was cut. Right. Now, back to let's talk about the data of that. That record was cut. That record went gold in like moments. It's one of the largest selling 12 inches of all time. Sugar Hill's on its knees. They're about to close. They have a hit record. They know it because they took Rapper's Delight, and Joe and Sylvia Robinson still had access to Frankie Crocker from WBLS. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Magic was playing like certain things. He had his Mr. Magic Hour, was the first person to spin hip-hop on BLS Fridays, maybe for a couple hours, right? So Joe puts in a call to Frankie. They play Rapper's Delight on the radio. Fucking radio blows up. Got to play it again. It's 10, 15 minutes long. So they knew they had a hit. The problem is disc makers wouldn't press the record up because they didn't have the money to do it, or they didn't have the credit to do it. They probably still owe the money from other records. Right. Who bails them out? Mo Levy. Yeah. Call Mo up. So if you look at the first, if you have any of you folks got this, the first pressings of Rapper's Delight came out on Roulette Records.
Unbelievable.
For about 2 weeks.
Wow. Then
Morris Levy comes in and goes, okay, we're going to start a new label. I'm going to restructure the stuff. What do you want to call the label? Sylvia's from Sugar Hill, Harlem. Yeah, I want to call it Sugar Hill. Sugar Hill blows up. It was like, I remember doing the first gigs with them. It was like, might as well have been with the Beatles, man. It was rap was just, And
they stayed
in 96 West Street. So what's the first thing they do? Build the Westlake Studios. They were making so much money that they had to figure out ways how to,
write
it off.
Yeah.
It happens like a flash. I'm talking like within weeks. Next thing you know, I'm in Hartford, Connecticut, chilling out. Leo's Welfare Disco. I hear 8 notes. Rapper's Delight. 4 days later, I'm back at All Platinum. We go right in the studio, start recording.
Hotel, motel, and what you gonna do today? Some gonna get a fly girl, gonna get some spank and drive off in a death OJ. Everybody go hotel, motel, Holiday Inn. You see, if your girl starts acting up.
We interviewed famed producer Jack Douglas live at AES in episode 32, where he discussed coming up at New York City's record plant and working with John Lennon. In this clip, he talks about his experience making the first New York Dolls album with Todd Rundgren and the insanity that ensued.
I did this New York Dolls album. That was the first New York Dolls album. Todd Rundgren was the producer, and the Dolls were, I don't know if you guys remember, the New York, they were really raw. And I lived downtown. I used to go see them at the Mercer Arts Center. I was totally into this whole Dolls thing, and Patti Smith, who I ended up producing, and Lou Reed, who I ended up working with. But I was into that whole scene down there at Max's. So Todd was like a really popular producer and brilliant. And I'd worked with him on Nas Records. And it was a bad combination, completely bad.
With him in the band?
Yeah. I mean, he would sit next to me. The band would be out there playing like Personality Crisis or Trash or one of these songs. And he'd lean over and say to me, God, this is fucking awful.
Well, he was also used to like Bat Out of Hell and like his thing.
No,
was,
this is much earlier.
Right, but I'm just saying like his aesthetic and even his records aesthetic was not very punk.
Lots of harmony, lots of production.
Yeah.
This was raw.
Yeah.
And so I was saying, I said, this is kind of revolutionary. This is really cool. It's raw. It's just like, it's proving that you don't need to learn to play an instrument to play an instrument. You know, they're just doing it. And a funny scene happened. So in fact, it was Personality Crisis. And David Johansen was in a booth singing the guide vocal. And Todd came in and he was just... I mean, he couldn't. He thought it was terrible, you know. And he said to David, he said, "This is going to be great." He says, "When we add some harmony." And David Johansen looked at him and he said, "Harmony? Are you accusing me of having melody?" But he was really taking the piss. But that was kind of the last we saw of him. He would phone it in after that. We didn't hear from him much at all until we mixed the record. And we did it without a producer. We used to keep the label out. We would meet them somewhere, you know. And the only people who knew what was going on was their managers, who were rooting that this record would get done. Jimmy Iovine, by the way, was my assistant on that day.
Wow.
Amazing.
And we had a lot of fun on it. And I mean, these guys were... A lot of them were out of their minds on heroin while we were doing it, and it was like just crazed.
Also, the background vocals that are on that are one of the greatest gang shouted non-harmony. They're just unison shouts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's harmony. Right. We got the record done. I know this is why I got into production, but when it was done. Bob Ezrin, who I'd been working with on Alice Cooper records, said to me, "You're producing."
That's great.
Episode 67 was another AES interview, where we talked to Sylvia Massy about her studio, The Audio Shop, and her career from Green Jello to Prince to Tool. In this clip, Sylvia shares some wild stories from her time working with Prince at Larrabee Studios.
I have a lot of good stories about Prince. Yeah. Yeah. It was fun. No, I can't say it was fun. It wasn't fun.
Was it high pressure?
High pressure.
Yeah,
and
it must have been.
He was not very nice, to be honest. It was demanding, but he did reward you with the hard work that you did.
Right.
In other ways.
Right.
Not personal praise.
Right.
Because it was not his nature.
So from a day-to-day session, you would not feel like you didn't know if it was going well, or
you never knew if it was going well. But you know what? It was these times I'll never forget, because there were sessions when it was him and me in the studio together, and he was playing all the instruments. He would turn around and grab a guitar, and I would have it in record, and he would play solos effortlessly, spinning on his heels. Dancing, and it's me and him, and it's like having my own private Prince show.
And we're talking analog, right?
Oh, yeah.
on tape.
Yeah.
Great.
So it was a special time.
And did he sing? He
Never,
sang by himself, right?
He would only sing by himself. So when I was engineering for him, I would set up the room so that after the bed tracks were finished, that he would do the vocals on his own. And he was a fantastic engineer and layered all the backing vocals and harmonies. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, he's really something else.
And he played the drums too.
He would, but when I worked with him, it was a lot of drum machine. Right. But he would play the drum machine with one hand without quantization. So the thumb was the kick, and the index was the snare, and the pinky was the hat. And he was playing it live. With the right hand, he would be playing the bass line on a keyboard. Unbelievable. So I got to witness that. But yeah, it was not an easy job.
Would he let people be involved in mixing?
Yeah, I mixed several tracks.
You did?
Yeah. But the hits that you hear, like on the album Diamonds and Pearls, some of that was done by Keith Cohen. Keith Cohen mixed a lot, and I was Keith's assistant. So sometimes I would be assisting Keith, and other times I would be engineering for Prince. I kind of took different roles, and sometimes Prince would have me mix things too.
Would he be present for the mix, or you'd mix and
I'd
send
mix.
it to him?
Well, there wasn't any sending because we were mixing 2 cassettes, basically, just for reference, and then 2 half-inch after that, ATR. But I have a couple of funny stories about all that.
Let's hear.
Okay, so let's see. So there was one time when we were doing the Diamonds and Pearls record, and I was assisting for Keith Cohen mixing the song "Get Off." And now Prince was so prolific that he would finish an album. The album would be mastered, but the label would say, we're not releasing it because you just put out an album 4 months ago. We don't want to compete against that. So give it a chance. Well, he couldn't wait. So he was constantly updating the album that was finished with new songs because he couldn't help himself. So he wrote this song, Get Off, and I didn't like that song. Personally, I thought the record was brilliant and it should just stay the same, but he wanted to take off some songs and replace with these new songs, and Get Off was one of them. So I'm sitting in the back of the room while Keith Cohen's mixing, and my job is to patch cables or whatever is needed, and Prince is in the room. And so I sit in the back of the room when I'm assisting, and I bring out my journal and I jot down a few things in my journal. And I think that day I really didn't like that song, and I can't express that. I would never say that to Prince. But in my journal, I can say whatever I want. So I'm like, there's Prince sitting on his purple throne, and he's taking a perfectly good record, and he's ruining it with this song, Get Off. It's not a good song. And I'm just venting onto the page.
Spoken like a true producer, by the way.
Yeah, right. In private, though. Yes. So, and then Keith says, hey, can you patch in this thing? So I put the book down and go over to the patch bay, and then I hear Prince saying out loud, there's Prince sitting on his purple. Yeah. He picked up the book and he started reading it out loud in the room. And I was so terrified. He read the whole passage, and then I grabbed it out of his hand and I thought, oh my God, I'm so fired. But he started laughing. Right. And at that point, our relationship changed. He became much nicer.
Right.
And then they ultimately even offered me a job to move to Paisley Park and be on staff, which I turned down.
Really?
Yeah.
Was that because
it's a little fucked up reading someone's journal.
Well,
he's Prince.
He's Prince.
Yeah.
That gives you.
It'd be fucked up if I read her journal, but Prince reading it, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's another fun story, though. Do we have time for that?
Do whatever you want.
All right. So I'm mixing. I get to mix some things for Prince, too. He kind of gave me a tape. He says, make a good mix of this. Or he didn't even say make a good mix. He just said, mix this. Okay, so I spend the whole day making this mix. And it's like a kind of a long song, about 7 minutes long. And it's one of those really sexy songs that he was known for, like, oh, baby, tonight, we're going to do it, we're going to do it a lot of times or whatever, however he was singing.
That's pretty sexy.
Yeah, super sexy. But so I spent all day working on it, and I wanted to get it just perfect. So I kind of had to stop myself at one point, because at one point a mix doesn't get better. It gets worse. So I stopped, and Prince wasn't there yet. And so I just sat down outside the studio and I waited. And I waited for a couple hours at least before Prince showed up, busting through the front door of the studio with a girl. And he was heading right to the studio, and I was like, oh, good, I get to play for him, and I follow him in there and go over there and get ready to play it. And he says, no, I got this, thank you. I don't need you. I'm like, okay. So I sit outside the door, and I can hear through the door that he's playing the song. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, he's going to love this mix. But then I realized, after the mix ended and another 5 minutes went by. I was like, what the hell?
It's a different version?
No, it was the same version, but what are they doing in there?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, sexy song. It's a sexy
Oh,
song.
boy.
So then they come busting out of the door. The hair is all messed up, clothes are all messed up, and they just walk out the front door. Not a word. Not a word.
Well, I guess the mix
that was
worked.
Right. It worked. Exactly.
I guess so.
For more on Prince in the studio and on the road, listen to episode 98, where we interview the people who worked alongside the pop icon. Gear Club loves Zappa, and in episode 49, we interviewed Joe Chiccarelli, who got his start engineering for Frank on records like Chic Your Booty and Joe's Garage. In this staff favorite, he talks about Frank's creative process, what he was like in the studio, and how he got the best out of the musicians on his albums.
So I was a 20-year-old assistant working at Cherokee Studios in LA. Just moved from New York and was there maybe only 6 months or so. And, I was the new guy at the studio. So, of course, you know how it goes. The new guy gets all the problem projects, the ones that work crazy hours, the ones that have drug problems, the ones that are demanding. So I'm the guy. So they hear Frank Zappa's booking in. Every assistant is like, no, man, I heard he's crazy. He works long hours. No. So it's like, put Chiccarelli on the session.
Holy shit.
So I'm like, okay, fine. It's 7:00 at night, and Frank walks in the control room door, and just as he walks in, the phone rings. I pick it up, and I'm like, Frank, it's for you. It's his engineer. His engineer's stuck in England, has visa problems, can't make the session. So Frank says, okay, you're it. You're engineering for the next 3 nights. So I'm like, okay, fine. And luckily, I was not a fan. I knew his name. I didn't really know the music.
So it didn't throw you off your...
Right. I wasn't intimidated. I wasn't, if it had been somebody I was really crazy about at the time, if it had been Bowie, I would have been trembling,
for sure.
But so I just went, okay, great. And it was just he and I doing lead vocals and guitar solos.
God.
And he was so great with me in that he'd do these solos and he'd say, what'd you think? I'd say, it's a little busy, Frank. But I didn't think about it, I just said what I felt. Yeah. And he'd go, okay, where? So this spot here. Yeah. Okay, cool. He'd go and he'd try something else, and we'd do vocals, and he'd say, "What'd you think?" And I go, that spot where you go, "Broken hearts are for assholes." I think assholes is a little sharp, Frank.
Oh God.
Broken hearts are for assholes. Broken hearts are for assholes. Broken hearts are for assholes. What you gonna do? 'Cause you're an asshole.
And he was like, I love it. It's great. He really appreciated my honesty. So after 3 nights of working together, he said, I got to go finish this album. They're all booked up here for the next 6 months. You want to finish the album? So it was great because here I am 6 months into being an assistant.
And you're out.
I'm like the low man at the studio, and I got to walk into the studio manager and go, look, I got to take a leave of absence for about 3 months because I got this gig engineering for Frank Zappa. So it was great moment,
Did he have a house studio, his own home studio?
No, this was before the studio. So we finished that album. Actually, we did some of it at Sunset Sound, the Record Plant, Cherokee, but we really camped out at the Village. We finished the album at the Village. He loved it. They had a Harrison console. For whatever reason, he loved that console. And then what I didn't know is Frank was a workaholic. He really, if he wasn't on the road, he wanted to be in the studio. So I instantly had a client. He went from one album to another. And after the Shake Your Booty album, which was the first album I did with him,
you did Joe's Garage.
I did Joe's Garage, and
that's a 3-album set.
Well,
right?
it didn't. This is funny. It didn't start out that. It actually started out. This is true. We went in the studio. The song from Shake Your Booty that was very successful was Jewish Princess. So he called me up one day, said, I'm going to do the follow-up to Jewish Princess. It's called Catholic Girls. So I just go, yeah, Frank, okay, sure, whatever. So we go So we go to the Village and record that and another track. I can't remember what it was. And it went really, really well. Oh, and he had Vinnie Colaiuta for the first time. And he hadn't really been in the studio with his band in quite some time. The Shake Your Booty album was basically live tracks that he stripped. He kept the bass and drums and redid everything else on top of it because he felt like live the band killed, but in the studio they were a little uptight. Right. So this was the first time in years he was in a tracking room with his band and loved it. So the next thing you know, 2 songs turned into about 24 songs. And I'll never forget, I said to him one day, I said, Frank, what are you going to do with all these songs, He said, just wait. The next day, he comes in with this script. He's figured out how to tie it all together with the central scrutinizer, all that silly stuff. Yeah. And he goes out to the microphone. There was a megaphone that was at the studio, and he picked it up and turned it into the voice of the scrutinizer.
This is the central scrutinizer. It is my responsibility to enforce all the laws that haven't been passed yet.
He just glued this thing together into a little play,
Don't make a fuss, just get on the
bus and be a cruise slut.
Well, I just remember Joe's Shake Your Booty being such a insane record to begin with. And then when Joe's Garage came out, I was like, wow.
But, see, that was the thing of him. The guy was alternative. The guy was indie way before that ever happened. Yeah, right. And for me personally, it was the greatest thing that happened to me because I was raised a pop kid, a rock kid. I played in straight ahead rock bands. I played in R&B cover bands, but it was all pretty mainstream stuff. So to now work with a guy who basically was saying fuck you to the record industry at every moment he could, that it was great for me to have this sort of left school education, and it really pushed me. And it was at a time, this was like early 80s, where everything wanted to be hi-fi. Everybody was trying to make the next Steely Dan record or whatever it was. So of course I had that mindset, and I was trying to make things perfect. And he just kind of look at me and go, "No, man, make it sound stupid. It's not stupid enough. Just fuck it up."
Turn it down.
Everything was just like had to be distorted. It had to be like the guitar amp in the toilet bowl. It had to be like just as weird as you could get. So it was really a great education. And of course, this is all pre DAW, so there's no plugins. There's no easy way to make any effect. I mean, the only effects that are out around then are an Eventide harmonizer, one of those ADA delays, an MXR flanger, and not much more. Cooper Time Cube, not much stuff going on. Phaser and a flanger, but so it was a great time for me. He just gave me this freedom to do everything. Never really was over my shoulder.
And what a great group of musicians.
Yeah, I mean, he had that ability to find guys who were just gifted and make them rise even higher.
Alex Case was on the podcast in episode 48, walking us through how some of the most iconic effects in recorded music were created. In this clip, he reveals the unique and ingenious way the solo from the Beatles' In My Life was recorded.
So the Beatles thing that you allude to is there's this the sort of very Baroque piano breakdown in the song "In
the
My
half
Life."
Speed?
The double speed, half speed sort of thing.
Right.
And so I remember as a kid hearing that and thinking that it's a harpsichord, but
Right.
it's not a harpsichord because I was a kid. I didn't know what a harpsichord was, but I knew it wasn't a piano. It was kind of weird. But if you slow it down, if you played at half speed, which we can do, it takes you to Abbey Road right away. It's the same piano you've heard a million times, recorded mono probably to a ribbon mic, however they were doing it, over compressed, but it sounds like that very piano. And it's just George Martin playing that part, but he slid down the bench an octave and played it at half speed. He was listening to the headphones, no doubt, with the tape going at half speed.
So it isn't a harpsichord.
No.
Oh, wow, that's great. I always thought it was.
In my life, I love you more.
That's so funny. I always thought that was fucking harpsichord.
And do you think he did that because he couldn't play it at that speed? Or,
Yeah, so
or
I
he knew the effect was going to be...
I think both, right? They were definitely exploring unique sounds for the sake of unique sounds. But I also think they had there's a real strong creative vision here. They knew they wanted that sort of part. They knew they wanted it to be some sort of ironically fancy sounding piano thing that was too fast for anyone to play. And that's actually George Martin playing it, right? So the classically trained musician in the room is trying to play, but he can't play it that fast either, I assume. I haven't seen proof of that, but that's certainly the folklore. So in fact, what they did is they cut the speed down by half, and here's how they tracked it.
I like this version better.
Ringo's never sounded better.
Yeah. It's like gloom pop. You love the hi-hat access, don't you?
Wow. You know, there are notes in there that I don't hear there's some harmony notes that are really exquisite.
Yeah.
And also imperfection, which obviously they let go. And a little lesson for everyone there to not fix everything.
Well, that's not going to happen anymore.
But so I sort of wonder, could this idea be born today, right? This is old man talking, but we live in a time where anything is possible, and we would be seduced by the idea to make something perfect. And that it was constraints that made them do this that led to maybe the happy accident or the deliberate unique sound that half the world thinks was a harpsichord anyway. So they were really pushing the limits of what they could do. They had a creative vision that it still had to be this part that we have in mind. Let's figure out how to do it, whatever it takes. And it becomes a hook for the song, a signature sound. And today we could absolutely play something at half speed and then have it sped up and still sound like a piano and make our performances perfect. And that would be disappointing. If this were truly just a Baroque piano bit, it would not have aged well. Right? Wouldn't you just play samples and you could listen to it at the final pitch?
Okay, I got you. So you could just double
the so it would be fairly trivial. You could even get a drummer to play this piano part, right?
Right.
And all it would take is patience and gear and a desire for perfection, and there'd be no soul in it, probably.
Right.
So I think we're lucky that they had those constraints, and it was the right people in the room to push the limit to that point.
There are places I remember all my life, though some have changed, some forever, not for better.
Greg Calbi is a world-class mastering engineer and dear friend who was our guest in episode 2 and has been on the show many times since, sharing his expertise and talking about his career from the record plant to Sterling Sound. In this clip, he talks about his work with John Lennon and tells a wonderful story about him and John playing a prank on Roy Cicala, owner of the record plant.
The thing with record plant was that when he was there, he was like always around. You go to the bathroom, he was in the bathroom. You know what I mean? He was just around all the time. So it wasn't like the nervousness that you would normally have, I guess, when you're working with John. Like people say, what was it like to work with him? Well, it was like he was there all the time, and he was with May Pang all the time.
Right.
So either May was hanging out, or you go into Roy's office and John would be sitting there talking to Roy. You know, so he was kind of on staff when he was booking time, and he booked a shitload of time. You know what I mean? So it was kind of casual. So you felt, I felt pretty comfortable with him, and he was not a tweaker when he came into cutting. He was not really super involved, and The only time I have that I have any story that I can remember about him being involved on the rock and roll album, we were listening to one song, and he put that delay on his vocal, and the vocal was really far back. I turned to him. I said to him, "We got to push the vocal a little bit forward." You know, it was weird to even say that to him. You know, because he's one of the great singers of all time. So I said the vocal's too far back, and I said I'm going to put some mid range, and he was like, "No." He said the vocal's terrible. It's terrible. And I said, "John, it's really good." But, you know, I'm trying to pep up the guy from the Beatles, right? Trying to cheer him up. I said, "It's really good." And he says, "Don't push it back." And I actually remember that I said exactly, I said, you know, you're probably one of the greatest singers in the history of rock and roll, and you don't want anybody to hear your voice. And he just shook his head. He went, "Rubbish. It's rubbish."
Really? Wow.
And then there were a couple of other songs on that album that didn't make the album that he just didn't want to listen to. But I think he did a couple of ones that he really thought was really sucked, you know. And he was just always just, you know, he was John, man. He was great. He was just great. He was just mellow. I never remember anybody there complaining about him in any way of being, you know, a prick or, you know, pulling rank or anything like that. He was just another guy working on records, you know. The good story that I have, the fun story that I have about him is when we worked together on the rock and roll album was that I had dropped a reel of tape, an old jazz tape. It was on a pancake. So it didn't have the reel, and it wasn't wound tight. So I just picked it up, and it just you know, it went bloop. So it was one of our clients, Mainstream Records, was one of the clients up there, and there was no, we were just holding it. There was no order yet, but I had to basically fix it. So when I was cutting a side or whatever, I sit by hand and try to get it onto a reel, slow, but boom, 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 you know, over and over. I was about maybe 10% of the way through it. And it was in a box in the room. And John looked at the box when he came in, and he looked at it. He says, "What the hell is that?" And I explained the situation. So he looked at me and he said, "Is there any way that we can make it look like that's my tape?" And I thought for a second. I said, "Actually, it's pretty easy. I just take a splice apart and I'll attach it to the reels on the machine, and it'll look like it flew off the machine." He said, "Oh, that's perfect." So he gets on the phone with Roy and he starts screaming, "What a jerk I am. Who's this fucking kid? He doesn't know shit. Get up here. This is ridiculous. I just lost really, you know," whatever he said. And about a millisecond later, the door opens and Roy, white as a ghost. I had never seen him look like this, totally white. And he goes over to the machine and he's trying, you know, it's like completely trying to put two and two together. And he says, don't worry. We can fix it. Don't worry. And then either John or I did that first and we both cracked up. And then Roy just turned and he said, "I'm going to get you guys." And John was so happy. He said, "I got you.
For more on John Lennon, go listen to episode 88, where we interview the engineers and producers who worked with John during his time in New York City. We got to interview legendary producer Tony Visconti twice during AES, in episodes 44 and 58, where he discussed his work with David Bowie and T-Rex and talked about his upbringing in Brooklyn, New York. In this clip, Tony talks to John and Stewart about growing up in Brooklyn, his love for doo-wop, and how immigration has shaped this country for the better.
What about talking a little bit about just where you came from, history?
Yeah, we came from the same place.
I know.
Same high school.
Well, we
went to Utrecht too.
Unbelievable. Yeah. What did you grow up listening to? Street music, doo-wop?
Doo-wop, yeah, basically, and R&B.
Right.
The first record I ever bought was Fats Domino record.
Yeah.
Blueberry Hill, I think it was.
I found my thrill on Blueberry Hill.
And then it was a 78.
Still a great record.
Yeah. And then I think after that, Keep a Knockin' by Little Richard.
Right.
And then following that, Buddy Holly.
Right.
But I bought records by Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers was the best doo-wop group ever. Yeah. And the Cleftones, right. String Around My Heart. I don't know if you know these old songs, but
I've loved you right from the start. Oh, baby, we'll never part. 'Cause you got a string around my heart.
What about Dion?
Oh yeah, Dion and the Belmonts.
I wonder why I
was an Italian group who did "Where Are You, Little Star." They were an Italian Bronx group. Wow. Forget what they were called. I was on WBGO with that Bob Porter in the morning, and for that, and he usually plays it's almost exclusively black records. And I said, I know I'm going to break tradition here, but this is a white Italian group from Brooklyn, and I played it, and he knew the song, right? And but they did it in the doo-wop tradition,
The Elegance.
The Elegance, yeah. The
Google.
Elegance. Yeah.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder where you are, high above the clouds somewhere.
Nice.
And there was the Del Vikings was a mixed group. The first, 2 white guys, 2 black guys.
What generation Italian American are you? Like your grandparents were from
3
Italy?
of my grandparents were from Italy, and the other one was born in America. He's Italian. Right. The Visconti was born in America. Wow. And my father's great grandfather came from Italy.
Obviously this country is built on that. I mean, it's built on people.
Immigration. Yeah, it's immigration.
Immigration. Perfect.
Our relatives immigrated.
Yes.
People didn't like them.
Yeah. My father, I talk to Tony A about it all the time. My father was an illegal immigrant.
Yeah.
Like he came after World War II, jumped ship, and got his, became an American citizen after Tony was born. But like when you think about the immigration stuff now, it's like, no, the whole country is built on that. Like my father's legacy is 3 sons who pay taxes, 6 grandchildren, doctors, nurses, teachers, and it's what really makes America great.
I have the full gamut in my family. Yeah. Same thing. My grandfather, my mother's father, was a fruit salesman.
Right.
My father's father was a fruit wholesaler, like right where Tribeca is. So you'd get all your fresh vegetables and fruit in Tribeca, and then you'd sell it all over the city. Trucks would drive. And my grandfather sold bananas and other fruit. And that's one of the few English words he could say was banana.
Wow.
And then, he used to make change and all that. He put my mother through school and his older daughter through school, and he made a good living.
Yeah.
He bought a house.
Yeah.
In,
it's crazy.
Like Warren Street, downtown.
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, downtown. Warren Street between Smith and Hoyt Street.
Yeah,
that area.
Which is, that's been now.
My first 6 years was there.
By the way, that also, when I was growing up, that was a very Italian area.
Yeah, it was.
Court Street, the Warren Street. That's where my father's longshoreman union was.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just blows my mind just going back there and just realizing that, this is fucking the United States.
There are a lot of Italians in London, mainly from the north.
Right.
But occasionally you meet a southerner. Right. My mother used to come over from America and cook for my friends and myself. And she'd go to this one grocery store in Soho. And she'd start speaking Italian, but old-fashioned Neapolitan Italian. And the women would drop all the other customers, and they would flock around my mother, Signora, prego, prego, and they'd go nuts over her. And they'd fill up 3-4 shopping bags full of the best stuff ever. And they'd just ignore the other customers who were English. I've been all over the world. There's nothing like Brooklyn. But you know what the best thing about Bensonhurst is that it was less than an hour subway ride to Midtown Manhattan, where I was 15 years old. I was on that train and I was doing demos on 48th Street.
It's amazing.
Where fucking Sam Ash was and all that. Yeah. And I was in all those small studios.
Yeah.
And then I'd go back home to my mother's house, my mother and father's house at night, have a nice Italian dinner, And my grandfather on my father's side he wasn't in the mafia, but all his friends were.
Exactly.
That's what they all say.
Yeah. And he played, but what was neat about him was he played violin and mandolin. And he was in a band with a singer, you'll remember, called Jimmy Durante. Wow. Yeah. So the 3 of them used to go and play mafia gigs,
Coney Island.
In Brooklyn. They play a wedding, something like that. So that's where I get my musical talent is from that guy. But the other day, I uncovered some recordings my mother made in the 80s and all that. And she had the most beautiful contralto voice. I never realized my mother sang perfectly in tune. Perfectly. And I phoned her up while she was still alive, and I said, Mom, you could have been a professional. You could sing. She'd sing the songs in Italian, which she could sing an aria if she bothered to learn arias. She had the voice. And she said, all Italian women can sing. It's no big deal. So modest.
My mother complains in perfect pitch. I can't believe you've never won a Grammy. I get that like once a year. It'd be nice. My mother says, it'd be nice if you won a Grammy so you could retire. Like she has this thing like where Grammy means like I could kick back in Florida for the rest of my life.
Show me the money.
It's so good. Oh boy.
Wear a tall hat like the druid in the old days. Wear a tall hat and a tattooed gown. Ride a white swan like the people of the Belgian. Wear your hair long, babe, you can't go wrong.
In episode 68, we interviewed writer and educator Paul Lehrman, who has an in-depth knowledge of music history, in particular early electronic music. In this clip, he talks to John and Stuart about the telharmonium, an instrument from the late 1800s listened to over telephone lines, and the rhythmicon, arguably the world's first drum machine, invented in 1931.
And I started most recently teaching a course in the history of electronic music from 1890 to 1980. And everyone says, 1890? What was there in 1890? Well, there was some interesting stuff going on in 1890.
Like what?
Go ahead.
Well, there was an instrument called the telharmonium. And the telharmonium was like a giant Hammond organ. If you can imagine a Hammond organ that has no amplifier stages. So it was basically built out of, I don't know how many hundred generators. And you hit a key and the generator spun around, and then it was broadcast over telephone lines, and you had to subscribe to it. So it was right in Midtown Manhattan, and Telharmonic Hall was they called it. It was this gigantic instrument. It was like 3 huge warehouse rooms, and they sold subscriptions. So you'd pick up your telephone and you'd hear somebody playing Foray or Stars and Stripes Forever or something like that. It was all live programming,
right?
And it wasn't the first electronic instrument, but it was certainly, the first reasonably well-known electronic instrument.
Right.
And,
Are there any documents of what it sounded like?
No.
Right.
Unfortunately,
it doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist. They went out of business around 1910. Wow. So there's no recordings.
Wow.
Terrible. And then when Lawrence Hammond came out with the Hammond organ, the guy who built this thing, his name was Thaddeus Cahill, his grandchildren wanted to sue Hammond.
Wow.
Because the idea was really similar.
Right.
Only instead of having this room-sized thing, you had these little tone wheels and amplifiers. Oh, we have triodes now. We can do this. And Cahill was still alive, and he just didn't want to get involved. He didn't want to mess with it.
Right.
But it really is the same design. It was just incredibly impractical. I mean, talk about the worst business plan in the world. Was this telharmonium. But, everybody knows about the theremin, and there's another instrument that Leon Theremin made in 1930 called the rhythmicon, which nobody knows anything about.
Yeah, what is that?
The rhythmicon is sort of a polyphonic, polymetric metronome. It can play 16 notes, 16 rhythms simultaneously. And the rhythms are all harmonically related to each other. So you've got a fundamental pulse, and then you've got the second, you've got 2 times the pulse, 3 times the pulse, 4 times the pulse, 5 times the pulse, 6 times the pulse. Then it starts getting weird. 7 times the pulse, 9 times the pulse,
so
11 times the pulse.
It's not the harmonic, it's not 1/5 octave, third.
No. Well, it is, but it keeps going. Because within the first 16 harmonics, there's a lot of strange stuff.
Right.
It's not like 2nd, 4th, 8th, and 16th. Right. It gets weird. You get into microtones. So each note is harmonically related to each other note, and each rhythm is harmonically related to each other rhythm. And it's this chaotic thing. It sounds great when it's going at full blast, and it's got a little keyboard. When you hit the keyboard, and it tells you, which harmonic you want to play. And there were only 3 of these instruments built. Oh. And one of them is in the Smithsonian. It doesn't work. One of them was destroyed. It was given to Stanford, and they destroyed it. And one of them's in Moscow at a museum at the Moscow Conservatory. A friend of mine in Holland is a real nut about ancient instruments, and he and I have been trying to track down rhythmicons for a few years. And I do an ensemble. I do an electronic ensemble at Tufts. And one of the pieces I wanted to do was a piece that was written by Henry Cowell for rhythmicon and orchestra. It's the only existing piece that was ever written for rhythmicon. And I decided I would do a computer simulation of a rhythmicon. So I put one together in Reason, and, I thought it sounded pretty good. So last year, there was a Laurie Spiegel party, and who should show up but Gautier, the pop star.
Oh, cool.
And I knew that he was into ancient electronic instruments because he was fooling around with Andioines and some stuff like that. He said I was an Andioine orchestra. I'd met him the year before at Laurie's. So we're at this party, and I said to him, I wasn't actually there. I was sick, so I couldn't come down for AES, so I Skyped my way into the party. So they're passing me around on an iPad, right? And I'm talking to her. So I get to Gautier and I say, hey, you'll appreciate this. I am going to do Henry Cowell's Rhythmicana for Rhythmicana and Orchestra. And he said, you want to use mine?
He has one?
He had built one.
Built one?
He had sent he sent an engineer by the name of Mike Buffington
to
Moscow, where they gave him permission to take the thing back to his hotel room. And he spent 4 days without sleeping, taking it apart, measuring everything, checking out all the components.
Wow.
Put it back together and reverse engineered it. And came back here, found this instrument was built in the 1960s. The other were built in the 1930s. And he found all the parts. There was a French film projector, which was the frame. There was a German turntable, which was the main motor.
Crazy.
And, and these giant capacitors and these Soviet tubes.
So what does it sound like?
It's not a pleasant sounding instrument.
I mean, you could just do that. You don't even need it.
That's right. No, you could sample me.
You sound fine.
And it would be
we just did.
Shelly Yakus is one of the most renowned engineers and mixers in modern history. He's made seminal records with Tom Petty, Van Morrison, Patti Smith, John Lennon, and so many others. We had the pleasure of interviewing him in episodes 64 and 65. In this clip, he discusses recording the band's incredible first album, music from Big Pink.
You were involved in Big Pink?
Yes.
And, I read Robbie's book about it, and I mean, it was so great to just sort of pretend like I was in the room for that. Do you remember that experience?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah?
Because it was unique, really unique.
Well, they were trying to recapture what they were doing in the basement, or...
Yeah, it was called Big Pink because they wrote the songs in the Big Pink house in Woodstock, right? And it was originally, the room was at A&R, was set up like a typical recording session, but they weren't comfortable. The band wasn't comfortable being separated. You can see why. I mean, you need that.
Band
yeah. So we restructured the whole room so that everybody was on top of everybody, and it was going to 4-track, and so the combination was usually bass and piano on one track. If you can imagine. Bass and piano, because the thinking was, well, when you get to the mix, if you needed a little more low end, you can access the bass with an EQ. You can get a little more. You can tilt that track. More highs, you get more piano, or mids, you get more piano.
How about that?
Right. And then all the drums were on one track. You have to get it right. You don't know what that last track of overdubs is going to be that could mask the drums. And when Levon sang, the voice was on the drum track with reverb just on the voice and a little reverb on the snare.
So those decisions had to be made on the spot.
On the spot.
Amazing.
Because there was so much voice in the drum mics. Well, let's put the voice, so the voice was mixed in with the drums, all on one track.
That's amazing.
And then the other 2 tracks we used for, lead vocal and... Holy cow. If Levon wasn't singing, it was maybe an overdub of horns, background parts, stuff like that.
And there was a piano player and an organ player. And
Yes.
And an electric guitar.
Yeah, guitar.
Yes.
Was the amp out of the room, or he wanted
No,
it?
it was right in the room.
Right in the room.
But Robbie's, and I'll never forget this, he said to me when we were first setting up, he said, I need 2 metal chairs facing each other, and I want you to put this box. It was just a cube, 1.5 by 1.5 feet, wasn't that big,
was this the Leslie?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Right, and he was
for
plugged into
Tears
that.
of Rage.
That's the first song on the record.
Yeah.
But I didn't know it was a Leslie.
Oh, wow.
So we put it on the chair, and I didn't see him step on a button, and all of a sudden this thing starts rocking back and forth. It's like it was alive. It was pretty weird at first, and it just made this great sound.
Right.
one of the most unique sounds was Garth, and I'm sorry, but I forget the name of the song. It's at the very beginning of one of the songs. And he was playing, he wasn't playing a Hammond, he was playing a Lowry through a Hammond B3 speaker.
Was it Chest Fever or something?
And he,
could be.
Sorry?
Maybe Chest Fever?
It might have been Chest Fever.
I remember
so
that.
in the beginning, no. Chest Fever is where we hear the organ
right.
growling.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we put the speaker in a vocal booth and tipped it back so the back of the speaker was facing the ceiling.
Wow.
And when he turned it up, it made that sound. He knew how to make that sound.
Yeah.
Well, our job was to like capture it, Yeah. But he had a telegraph key on one of the songs. He's got this telegraph key sitting on top of his organ. And I said, Garth, what are you doing with the telegraph key? And he said, watch. And on the telegraph key, you can loosen the tension. So, it's for Morse code, telegraph key. And, and so you can make it however stiff you want. So he loosens it all the way, so there's no tension. And he whacks the key, and it starts bouncing up and down, and he starts playing. And the output of his organ went through that key to the Leslie. So it made it go grrr. So it made this effect in the beginning of the song. Nobody ever heard anything like that. I had never heard anything.
You well.
If your memory serves you well.
That's what I mean about you had to make your own sounds. And he certainly did. All these guys in that band brought something to the table, something remarkable. And Levon brought his drum sound, which had calfskin heads on it, which you could still buy at the time. And it was dead and live at the same time. You didn't have those overtones.
This final clip is pulled from episode 77, where John, Stewart, Bill Whitman, and Terry Manning talk about the ever-elusive, always evolving, often argued over drum miking techniques. For the record, I'm with John. I think a lot of mics on the drums are fun.
I remember when I was really young and really starting out, and I had worked with, by this time I had somehow at 18 or 19 years old, had worked with Al Jackson and with John Bonham and Ronnie Tutt. And I remember thinking, this drum thing is so easy. There's nothing to this drum thing. Mm-hmm. And then I started working with bands, new bands. And I'm going, oh my God, what happened to the great drum sounds? Where are they?
It was a thing when, okay, we're going pretty far back, but at a certain point, I don't know, let's say from the early 60s or so in pop music and rock music, everybody pretty much, every studio mic drums with a bass drum mic and a single overhead. And so if you wanted to be a working studio drummer or a hotshot drummer in a group that's doing well and sounds good on a record, you had to have a balance in your playing in which the hi-hat was the right relationship to the snare, the backbeat was the loudest thing in the mix. You had to have all that together as a player, or you couldn't be a successful recording drummer because nobody was going to put a mic on the ride cymbal. It was the way it was. It was one mic overhead.
I totally agree. And that's why some of these old records, even like go back to like Dion records, like 50s records, the drum sounds are fabulous.
Yep.
And you know they're not fussing with it. You know that there's a big room and a lot of people in that room. And to Bill's point, not only are they balancing within the kit, but they're balancing the volume in relation to who else is playing in the room. So the spill is beautiful, but it really came down to the drummer.
Yeah, the bleed, the spill is gorgeous. And in most cases, the musicians were listening to each other in the room, not on headphones.
That's right.
Right.
So they were balancing as they naturally would, not unnaturally.
Boy, is it so different these days.
Oh.
I mean,
I'm literally going to say to a guy on Saturday, you realize Bonham sounds great, but he's not really bashing the drums all the time.
Right.
And he's not hitting cymbals all the time. It's open. But I'm literally going to have this conversation on Saturday.
Well, Jimmy Page's guitars weren't turned up to 11 with a fuzz tone pedal. They sound pretty clean if you really listen.
Right.
Yeah, right.
And Jimmy has said specifically that if he'd go listen in the producing the record, so if he was listening in the control room and the ride cymbal was too loud, he said, I would go out, I would tell John Bonham, hey, that ride cymbal's loud. And he went, right, I'll play it softer. The drummer made it work to the microphones.
Well, I remember Bonham saying when we were talking about how drums were to be mic'd, so you don't need to put but one mic. I'll handle all those balances.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, we didn't do exactly that, but he knew that, and he was, in his mind, he was the modern day Gene Krupa.
That way, you get to hear the room a little better because you're not hearing things right on the skins. You're actually hearing the environment, and that's pretty exciting.
Yep.
There are very few instruments, I don't think there are any instruments that are actually designed to be heard from an inch away, even though sometimes we like that closeness, but they're really, they're made to develop at a distance.
Right.
Well, I remember another session story, but at Compass Point, we had a drummer in, and I won't say the band or the producer, but everybody would know both. And I was with the producer, and we opened the door from the hallway, and he said, listen to those drums. And the drummer, who is a well-known session drummer, was just not bashing away, but playing away, and it sounded gorgeous. And I said, yeah, this won't be a problem. Then, when it was time to mic things, he wanted like 16 mics, 2 up, top and bottom, here, there, everywhere, and in the control room, kept saying, why doesn't it sound good like it did? Mm-hmm. And I remember saying, well, excuse me for bringing this up, and it's your record, so do what you want. But do you remember when we opened the door and heard them? He said, yeah. And I said, was your ear right up on that tom-tom or hi-hat or whatever? No. What were you hearing? I was hearing everything coming out of the room. I said, why don't we try it more simply? And it worked, of course. But you just don't think that. It's not natural to go right up on any instrument with your ear.
Exactly. Yeah. And that so many people create their own problems by doing stuff like that, and that I need to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I consult with a couple of different drummers and who have developed little home studios where they can remotely do work. And if I say to them, you just need a mic here and a mic there and maybe a mic on the snare and the bass drum and you're done, they say, yeah, but the clients who are hiring me say, I need a mic on every cymbal. I need a mic on the top and the bottom of the toms. And all they're doing is first of all, they're making themselves sort of self-important, like now I have to be the guy who puts it all together, but also they create all the problems that invariably they complain about later.
Well, I've sent a few sessions to Jean Nadeau in Toronto, in Canada, who does a lot of session work up there, great drummer, and he's got his own studio set, Big Bone, I think, on the forum, and he'll send me the tapes back, and it's got all the mics, 15, 12, 16 mics, whatever, because he says everybody wants that. Yeah. And I'll end up using maybe 4 of them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I do that too. I'm definitely known for using a lot of mics, but I just use them for options.
Well, that's good too, sure.
I like having the 57 through the distortion pedal right over the drums in case I want to blow something up.
I know a lot of people who say they do that. It's not good for my brain. Like, I'd rather know I'm locked into an option, and then I'll make my other choices based on that as we go down the line. But I understand what you're saying. It doesn't hurt in a DAW. You're not going to run out of tracks.
Right.
So
And to me, it's fun. You know what I mean? Honestly, I need to do stuff like that to keep me engaged. You know what I mean?
I'll say the Hitchhiker's Guide quote, which is, this is apparently some new definition of fun with which I was previously unaware.
Oh, come on. I'm sure. Listen, I just like trying new things. I did the top and bottom on the toms for years, and I really like that. And then I decided, fuck it, I don't want to do it anymore. I'm going to do, just go back to the tops. But that's honestly why this is all great, because we can all do different. Okay, go ahead.
But what Terry and Bill are kind of saying, at least what I'm getting, in this DAW world, we all forget this. Maybe go back. Instead of going, I've recorded 16 mics, I'll put the tom up here later, I'll use the bottom mic, go out and talk to the drummer and really communicate that something is not working with a few microphones. It should work with a few mics, right? So And I've been guilty of this. You just get a little bit lazy, a little bit like I've recorded all this stuff. I'll put the hi-hat up or not up.
I guess I've also found over the years it doesn't help. It's like you tend to have people say, oh, sure, you can do that with John Bonham, but if I told my drummer to play the cymbal softer, the whole thing will fall apart. And I just don't think you're really fixing that problem. It's like you still hear the drummer's balance no matter how many microphones you put on it. The playing is still going to matter. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's fun. Like I said, I don't do it like you're fixated on all the mics. Like I the previous record I did in Nashville, I literally, when I was mixing it, I was using like 8 tracks just because the rooms sound great in this. You know what I mean? It's just different every time. For me, it's just fun to have to do that stuff.
Well,
I don't know.
That's exactly right. It is different every time, and there's nothing wrong with experimenting. A lot of all these things are valid. It's just what your brain wants, what your psyche can handle at that time.
Right.
Before we get onto the tambourine, can I ask one question? Room mics. We all love room mics. If it's a sweet room, we love the room mics. Stereo room mic, mono room mic. Anybody care?
I've used both.
Me too.
It depends on the room, I guess, or how many mics you've got. I like stereo drum room mics, but I've used one many times, so I don't know. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think it depends. If you're getting a nice stereo picture from the room, I'll do that. And if you're not, sometimes I find a mono room mic and I might use some studio trickery to stereoize it in the mix or not. It really depends on the room for me.
Going back to these older records, if you listen to a Bobby Darin record or something, or even like earlier Phil Spector, you hear a ton of room, or Brian Wilson, but they're always mono rooms, right? I would doubt that those were stereo rooms.
Well, they're probably not room mics. That's probably leakage.
Yeah, I would say so.
Right.
I'd say it's probably not a room mic. And Brian wouldn't have been doing anything in stereo.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's the whole genesis of room mics is we used to have the singer in the room with the band and you heard the drums distantly and that sounded great. And now when we took that away, people started to say, how do I get that ambience back in?
A lot of that sound did come from the singer, from the vocal mic.
Yeah, and all the processing on the vocal mic.
Yeah, if there was any.
Yeah.
Right.
For links, playlists, and extras for this and all our episodes, go to gearclubpodcast.com and be sure to sign up for our mailing list for the latest news and interviews. Follow us on social media at Gear Club Podcast and head over to our YouTube channel at Gear Club Podcast for video versions of all our episodes and more.
Thanks for listening. Gear Club is produced by James Frazee and the inexplicably enigmatic Jacques Friest. Our video wizard is Emily Sassmore. Matt Ely is our production and marketing czar. Luna Navarro is our social media maven. Gear Club is hosted by Stuart Lehrman and Jean Angela, and sometimes James. Big thanks to this episode's guests, our musical director Mel F. Lewis, our legal counsel, the firm of Dewey, Cheatham & Howe, our house band, the Silver Merkins, and our sponsor, Eventide.
What, are you guys doing a podcast?
Come on.